Hello everyone, it's Colin here, and today we're going to be doing a front brake job on this motorcycle. This motorcycle is a Wuxi Stanford Z1000 electric motorcycle, as you may have gathered by the lack of an engine in the middle and a hub motor in the back. But they copied this particular Brembo caliper from everyone, it appears. It looks like the following other motorcycles also use this exact same brake arrangement. And in fact, I've bought parts for this replacement job that were intended for a KTM Super Duke. But as I mentioned, KTM Super Duke, 1190, and a variety of other KTM models use this same front brake arrangement. It looks like the Suzuki GSXR uses it, Kawasaki Ninja H2s use it, and the Honda CBR 1000. So if you have any of those bikes and you've got this particular Brembo caliper and you're wondering how to replace the front brake pads and rotors, watch on. To do this job, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need replacement brake rotors and brake pads, of course. You will need 2 coat hangers to hang the calipers from while you work on the rest of the bike. You're going to need some sockets and extensions. The axle nut for me is a 19 millimeter, although I've seen them vary anywhere from 24 to 18. And I need an adapter to go from a 3/8 drive to a 1/2 inch drive. A regular 6 or so inch extension is useful. You're going to need some Allen head type sockets here, or I guess these are prongs. This is a 5 millimeter, this one's a 6, and the larger one here is an 8. You also need a torque wrench, and a regular 8-inch ratchet will do as well. A flat blade screwdriver is useful for compressing those pads and calipers. A C-clamp can also be used, although I brought mine out but I didn't actually use it very much. You'll need a cold chisel and a dead blow hammer or similar to get the axle out, and possibly a breaker bar to remove the axle nut. You also need a bike stand of some sort to elevate the front wheel off the ground to do this job. Before we start working on that front wheel, we're going to have to jack up the bike, which means these plastics are going to have to come off. Now this part will be a little bit different for each individual motorcycle, especially given there's so many models that this is relevant to. But in my case, this takes a 5 millimeter hex head, and I've put it on a socket with an extension here just for convenience. I've got 2 screws on this side and 2 more on the other side, and then this plastic drops away. Can go ahead and jack up the motorcycle. I've got my floor jack here, and I've shoved a wood block under the back tire here because this is an electric motorcycle and I can't just put it in gear. Of course, if you do have a regular motorcycle, you can put it in gear instead. But we're just going to jack this up just enough to get the front wheel off the ground. Next, we're going to loosen the front axle nut. If I'm honest, I should have done this before I jacked up the bike, so I'm not fighting the spinning wheel, but anyway, this takes a breaker bar and a 19 millimeter socket if you've got this particular motorcycle and not one of the others. But that wasn't actually too bad, so. Okay, now we're going to undo the front axle nut pinch bolts. There's 2 of them here, and they're going to take a 6 millimeter Allen head socket to be removed. Here's the Brembo caliper we are working on, so if you're looking for a good shot of it to see if you've got the same one, this would be it. The next step is to remove the caliper from the caliper mounting bracket, and that's going to require a 8mm hex head socket. So we're going to undo these 2 bolts, which are quite tight. Alright, now with a bit of encouragement from our dead blow hammer and a center punch, we should be able to remove the axle bolt here and slide the tire away. Bear in mind, you will likely have spacers on both sides. Those will also fall as the bolt is removed. And of course, don't do anything that will to damage the threads on your axle bolt. Okay, now that we've got our calipers out of the way and our axle bolt out, we can go ahead and roll the tire and wheel assembly out of the way. These brake rotors are secured with 5 6mm Allen head screws. Okay, next we're going to go and pop out the old brake pads that we're going to be replacing here. So we'll go ahead and take that off our coat hanger for the moment. And I'm going to use a flat blade screwdriver to see if I can compress these guys enough to get the pads out before we get a C-clamp in there. Okay, here's our new ones, and we're going to slide them right in. As you can see, we've got our new brake rotor here, and now we're going to go ahead and bolt it down. The originals were held in with those same Allen head screws, and they've got lock washers under them, and they need to be torqued to 13 foot-pounds. So we're going to go ahead and swap those bolts over and put on these 2 new rotors. Now that we've got our new rotors back on the wheel and the rim, let's go ahead and get the rim on the bike. Before you get started, make sure you have your tire rotation in the correct direction, otherwise you have to take it back off again and do this part twice. Then get your axle bolt and your 2 spacers. And go ahead and get them lined up. Do bear in mind that your spacers are likely not the same length, and you need to put them on the way they came off, otherwise your rotor will have interference and clearance issues with your front forks. You usually need to get the spacers lined up first, then roll the wheel on, and then stick the axle bolt through. We'll probably be using the dead blow hammer again to get everything where we need it. At this point, with your wheel on, but your axle just kind of free floating there, Your front wheel should spin very nicely, not have any serious friction or anything on there. And the next thing we're going to do is tighten the axle pinch bolt. You need to do this before you can torque the axle nut. And so we'll hand tighten these and then torque them down to 13 to 18 foot-pounds. With our axle pinch bolts tightened, the next thing to do is to tighten the front axle nut. This one gets torqued to 35 to 40 foot-pounds. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is get the calipers with the new brake pads on. But before we do that, we need to make sure there's no oil on these discs, because they very often come from the factory with oil on them, and with our grubby mitts, we very well may have added some ourselves. So we're going to go ahead and take some brake parts cleaner and spray off those rotors. If you're in a shop, you definitely want to turn a fan on, because this is going to get stinky. Alright, now we're going to go and put our brake calipers back on. For this part, we might need to compress the pistons a little bit. And so I've got a screwdriver here for that, and I've also got a C-clamp over there to see how much finagling it takes to get them on. Also, these caliper bolts go in with 25 foot-pounds of torque. Well, that's all there is to that. All that's left is to take it off the stands, put the plastic undercarriage back on, and go for a ride. Make sure the first time you take it out, you go easy on the brakes and hit them a bunch of times to bed the pads against your new rotors. After that, you should be good to go. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.